Hello once again, everybody. Thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday, October 27th edition of ATS Radio. I'm your host, Adam Burke. I'll be joined today by Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. We'll talk some NFL with you here for Week 8, talk a little bit about the Bermuda Championship, then get you on your way here for the rest of your Tuesday. Over at ATS.io, lots of great content. My updated college football power ratings, opening line reports for the NFL and college football. Just posted a college football article this morning with some situational spots, some betting trends, some other nuggets and news on some of the games here coming up this week. So you check that out as well. And I'll have recaps of what happened this past weekend in the Westgate Super Contest and also the Circa Sports Million. Both of our entries going 3-2 in the Circa here in Week 7. Got a new promotion over at BetMGM for you to check out. Bet $1 on the money line for either one of the two teams on Thursday Night Football, the Falcons or the Panthers. And if a touchdown is scored in that game, you get $100 in free bets. You can read about that over at ATS.io. If you sign up through us over at ATS, you'll get up to a $500 risk-free bet with the promo code ATS. So head on over to the website and make sure that you check that out. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and bring on Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Talk a little bit of Week 8 NFL, a little bit of Bermuda Championship here. And Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam, we're slugging through this football season. It seems like we're going to make it, finding a way. Some great games, some wild games in relation to the number, missed extra points, bad coaching decisions. The Falcons find another excruciating way to just gift wrap and give a game away. It's 1 week to the next, man.
Yeah, it's been crazy. You know, all these games kind of coming to a head at the same time, it feels like, too, especially with regards to the Circa Sports Million entry that we have. I had the Browns in that last week, should have been 4-1. I go 3-2 because Cody Parkey misses the extra point. That was a big swing game in the Super Contest as well. Like I said, a recap coming up of those two contests today. But you know, Brian, like you said, I mean, it's been kind of touch and go on the COVID front. We've had some cases. We've had some early week concerns. We've had some teams kind of isolate, go through the contact tracing process. But for the most part, you know, these games have pretty much gone off as scheduled and as expected. So, you know, kudos to the NFL and kudos to everybody involved for, you know, following the protocols and doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, 1 week to the next, like I said, we had the 1 week with Cam Newton. You know, it's going to come down to that. There's going to be that big game when, you know, an important player tests positive. And then there's a luck factor. The Bills went to the Jets. They almost had no tight ends. Their starting tight end, Dawson Knox, gets COVID. So it goes through the tight end room, and they catch a break because Tyler Kroft wasn't in the tight end room that day because his wife was having a baby. Other than that, the Bills would have had to play a game with no tight ends.
Yeah, it's crazy. And now in college football, Wisconsin, seems like they got about 20 players that have it. The starting quarterback, the third string quarterback, because Jack Cohen is hurt. They're down to their fourth string guy. And like we talked about in the MAC last week on the show with Brad Powers, the MAC is a mandatory 21-day absence if you test positive as a player or as a coach. So now Wisconsin really up against it. So hopefully those things are mitigated here as we go forward. I don't know, things spiking across the country. We'll kind of wait and see. But, you know, I asked you this question a few weeks ago, and I guess I'll ask it to you now. Like I said, I mean, things for the most part have gone off without a hitch. We've had some adjustments to the schedule. We've had some bye weeks shifted around, stuff like that. But you got to feel pretty confident at this point in time playing a lot of these NFL games early on in the week if you think there's some number value, because a lot of them are going off and everything's been, you know, pretty good for the most part.
And the line swings 1 week to the next based on the result. It remains this phenomenon to me, how, you know, for eternity, a line would move a point and a half, maybe. You know, hey, I got a power ranking on a team. This is, you know, okay, they won. I'll move it slightly. But we're seeing 3, 4, 5, the change of favorite kind of swings from 1 week to the next. It's a remarkable phenomenon. And it's funny, I think, you know, you can almost identify certain teams that one that's sticking out like a sore thumb is Tampa Bay, understandably so. But I mean, they beat Green Bay, a game that was pick at the Raiders, ended up Tampa -3, and it was the correct move. Tampa takes care of the Raiders. The Giants are the Giants, and that number goes from whatever was it, 8 up to 10.5. So it's funny that there are public teams, even in the opening line report now. It's a different world.
Yeah, it really is. And, it's been kind of interesting to watch. And especially with regards to the college football side, where I actually do make my own numbers, we have seen, I think, bigger overreactions than we've seen in previous years. But a lot of times they've been correct. They've been the correct case. So far here, the overreactions to teams like San Francisco have been right. To teams like Tampa Bay have been right, at least over the last couple of weeks. So that will be something worth following as we go forward here. But, again, it's one of those things to me where I try not to overreact. I try not to over-adjust my college football power ratings too much. And then my numbers wind up short, or, there's something else that goes on with that line that I didn't account for. And maybe that's just the nature of the beast, especially because we've got, again, this is the first year where we've got 20 states betting on football. So maybe those reactions are more warranted just because of the increased handle and the increased amount of money across the country here going into these games.
Well, I would say the San Francisco one's 1-1 because they got mauled by Miami.
Yeah.
And they were a 3-point favorite against the Rams. And after they got mauled by Miami, the Rams went off a 3-point favorite. And then San Fran got their act together and easily handled the Rams. And then the next week, now, everybody loves San Fran, and they go cross country to New England as a 3-point favorite, and that was right. So, it's like anything. It's almost like now we have to handicap the line move in the opening number.
Well, let's talk about this Thursday night game. I know you've already done a video here for us on our ATS YouTube page, but, I don't know how many people get to the shows on the day of, so I try to give as much lead time as I can. Atlanta and Carolina here, 2.5 with juice, or 3, the prevailing numbers out there in the marketplace. Total has come down a little bit on this one from 51 to 49. Short week, division game, two teams very familiar with each other. Figure that's probably the rationale behind the move on the total here. But just real quickly, because I know you went more in detail with your highlight video over at ATS YouTube, but what are your thoughts on this game here, Brian?
Well, McCaffrey, there's a chance McCaffrey plays. Probably wouldn't be a good idea. If you didn't play him this past Sunday, why wouldn't you give him an extra week and a half's rest and make sure you got him the rest of the way? So I'm not buying that one. If he's good enough to play Thursday, then he had to be really close to play this past Sunday. But I think if you went inside that Carolina game, they really gave New England all they could handle. And that was in spite of the fact that they only had 3 possessions in the second half. Carolina's defense couldn't get off the field. The one thing the one thing Atlanta can do is when they're having a good game is they can put points up, and Ryan's still capable of making an egregious mistake. I don't know that I'm on board with the move to the under. I'm kind of thinking if Carolina couldn't get – and New Orleans is pretty methodical, a lot of underneath stuff against the Panthers. I can see Atlanta putting points up here, and in Carolina, give Rule credit, man. These guys are playing hard. If I had to play the game, I'd probably lean towards the over.
Well, and as I look at this one here, looks like we've got some wind on Thursday in Charlotte, Thursday afternoon. We'll see if the wind stays heading into the evening, gusts up to 30 miles per hour. So maybe it's a weather-related move, actually more than anything here.
Okay, you know what? And if I'm not mistaken, with all that's going on in the world, I did notice there's another hurricane going in the Gulf. So that may be the tail end. Is that the tail end of that hurricane blowing through there?
It could be. I think they said landfall for that hurricane probably Wednesday afternoon, but it could impact some of the college football games during the week here this week. It could impact some of the college football games on Saturday.
Come on, let's play weatherman. If it's hitting the Gulf on Wednesday afternoon, then Thursday night it's in Carolina.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I haven't really looked at a path for the storm here as of yet, but again, I mean, it's a reminder, whether it's hurricanes or something else, weather is a significant factor once we get to the fall. The winds pick up, a lot more chances for rain and snow and stuff like that. So make sure you're checking those weather reports on all of these games. Again, it can be a little bit risky playing weather-related unders early in the week if that forecast changes or something like that. But does look like maybe weather could be a factor here for Atlanta and Carolina. We'll have to see as we get a little bit closer to this game.
And don't forget, wind is the thing. I mean,
Right.
You had snow in Denver, and the bottom line is the defenders are slipping, and there were a couple of fumbles in the game early on that produced points. The ball was like a greased pig. So wind is the determining factor. The slick snow, things of that nature. Everybody's, it's snowing. Play the under. It actually, I think, it actually leads to producing more points because the defenders are sliding away and the tackling sucks.
So aside from the weather, the one thing I would mention here regarding Carolina, and I don't think McCaffrey's going to play. It sounded like after practice yesterday that he probably wasn't going to.
Makes no sense.
But I'm going to look to fade Carolina in the first game that McCaffrey comes back because I like what they've done with Teddy Bridgewater. I like the offense that they've been running here without McCaffrey. And I understand McCaffrey is a great player, but, look, they throw a lot of passes to him. He's targeted a ton. Those are short passes. They're not really chunk plays usually, unless he, breaks a bunch of tackles or there are a bunch of missed tackles, something like that. I think it could actually interrupt any sort of momentum that this offense has, which is crazy to think about with a player of his caliber. But if he doesn't go here on Thursday night, I may look to fade Carolina in their next game with McCaffrey coming back. So that's just something to file away. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just kind of my thought on it.
It's something to consider, but it's almost an unknown, like the Dolphins, and maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. But the one thing I would say is if he doesn't play Thursday, then Rule has the benefit of extra time to prepare to work on the things with McCaffrey back in the lineup. I like your thinking if they were playing Sunday to Sunday and it was a regular week, but I think with extra time to prepare, you're certainly a better football team with him in than out.
Well, that's an excellent point. That's definitely something that we can revisit next week in advance of Carolina's next game. So technology permitting here, we're going to do a highlight video talking about a few different games for Week 8 in the NFL. I'm ATS Radio host Adam Burke, joined today by Brian Blessing of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And we're going to jump around the NFL card a little bit, taking a look at a few different games here to break down for our ATS YouTube channel. And we'll start with game 255, 256 here, Brian. New England takes on Buffalo. Buffalo, 3.5, 4-point favorite, depending on where you look. Total on this game has come down into the 43.5, 44 range. This would be, assuming this line goes off in that 3.5, 4 range, the biggest favorite role for Buffalo against New England since 2000, since week 16 of the 2000 season when Buffalo was a 5.5-point favorite against New England. And they've only been favored twice since then against the Patriots. So big expectations for the Bills here this week.
Well, both of these teams are coming off a week they'd like to forget. The difference is the Bills won their game and the Patriots were just embarrassed, which to me makes them dangerous, very dangerous. The Bills, I don't know, Adam. I mean, I follow this team, that I watch them religiously, and it's infuriating where they sit there and say, well, we got to find a way to get the running game going. And I'm not a football coach, but I can tell them how to get the running game going. Every time they give the ball to Singletary or Moss, they're in the shotgun, and Allen hands it to the guy standing next to him. If you put Singletary or Moss back in the eye and get a running start where the kid can pick a hole, the running game will be fine. That being said, they got away with it against the Jets. Allen threw for 307 yards. And Trent Dilfer brought up a good point. If you remember the Raiders game out here, when Allen got knocked out of the game right before halftime, the Bills never said what it was, but Dilfer said he's convinced he dislocated his left shoulder. It was his non-throwing shoulder, but he's been wearing a brace on his left shoulder, and he's been a little bit off since that play. And I thought that was a pretty good point by Dilfer over the weekend. The problem with the Patriots is, and both Adam, did we not say this? I said it a boatload last week, so I'm pretty sure I said it here as well, that the Patriots could be a little ATM machine for you here at halftime. If you play them, if they're playing with the lead, play them. If they're behind, fade them. Because I think if Newton's running and they're dinking and dunking and they're fine, they can run their offense. But if they're down and they become one-dimensional, Newton can't bring you back, through the air, and they don't stretch the field. And I think that remains in play. If New England's ahead at halftime, and Belichick's great at adjustments, play them. But if they're down 10, 13, 14 points, fade them, because through the air, I just don't see New England doing a whole heck of a lot.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, you mentioned Josh Allen going out and how he really hasn't looked the same since. Really, it's been the same thing for New England. Once Cam Newton got the positive COVID test, it seemed like it stopped any momentum that the Patriots had. Early on in the year, they looked pretty good running that offense, Newton in the quarterback run, different looks for the defense, stuff like that. Look, we're talking about a team that was a yard away from beating Seattle just a few weeks ago. And now they're just a dumpster fire. They look terrible on offense. They did nothing against the 49ers really last weekend. So I'm not going to say that it's, like some sort of residual COVID symptom or something like that for Cam, because I have no idea. But just whatever happened with that whole situation just kind of threw the Patriots for a loop. And they really haven't been able to respond to it and get back to any level of efficiency on offense. So you wonder here, can they do that against the Bills? Will they do that against the Bills? A Bills defense that has had a lot of injury problems this year. Matt Milano's missed a couple of games. Trey White missed a game, and he hasn't been fully healthy. Trey Edmonds, he was also out of the lineup for that game against Miami earlier in the year. The Bills defense hasn't looked super crisp either. Is this a get-right game for the Bills defense? Is this a game where the Patriots offense kind of figures it out? I think it's kind of a tough one. I think people are going to flock towards taking Buffalo because New England has looked so bad, but I don't know if I'm going to get involved in this game.
Well, the one thing I would say from the Bills' defensive side of the ball, when they're healthy, Milano and Edmonds in the middle are space eaters, and they're the key. Milano did play last week. Edmonds is playing hurt. He's got a shoulder injury, which isn't fun for a guy that, is getting a couple hundred tackles a year. The other issue that the Bills had, and they got away with it because it was the Jets, is they had literally gone to the Meadowlands and leading right up the game time, they had one cornerback that they knew was playing. Trey White's been hurt. The safeties are okay. But the guys that actually came in, this Dane Jackson kid played well. But the Bills' defense, and not to give them a pass because they've been horrid against the run, but the last couple of weeks they shored things up against the run. But Buffalo's defense has really been beset by injuries, which I think bodes well for them down the road. Like, people are off the train. They were 5-0, and okay, they lose to Tennessee, and then as ugly as it was, it was 3rd and 14, and they had a chance to get the ball back, down 6 against the Chiefs, and Allenwood had a chance to go down in the field and win that game when they were just awful that entire game. And on a 3rd and 14, Jerry Hughes goes inside and lets Mahomes go outside for the first down. So it's been kind of an ugly 3 weeks for the Bills, but I still think this is a team, and maybe it's a good thing that they're flying under the radar a little bit again.
I guess the last question here, because we always talk about this in every game that Bill Belichick's part of, we know he isolates one thing and takes it away. What is the one thing that he tries to take away from Buffalo here? Is it Diggs? Is it, maybe if Dawson Knox is able to come back from COVID, is it the tight end? Who does he try to take away in this game?
Oh, it would absolutely be Diggs. And honestly, Diggs had a very, very quiet game against the Jets last week. I think the Jets kind of did the same thing. Now, John Brown being hurt on the other side has not helped. But since John Brown's been hurt, fantasy football players, the guy that's been lighting it up again underneath is Cole Beasley. I think he had 111 yards against the Jets, so he becomes an option. But the rookie is actually quite good, Gabriel Davis. But if you're Belichick, here's the beauty of what Belichick maybe can do here is he's got Stephon Gilmore. So he could say, I trust Gilmore to take Diggs away. And then he goes and says, well, right now the Bills can't run the football. So Belichick actually has some options here. But the matchup, that's like a pay-per-view event, is Diggs versus Gilmore. Diggs had the 1 week where you thought the same thing was going to be in play was Diggs against the Rams and Jalen Ramsey, and Diggs had a great day. But I think that was more of the Rams. Maybe we were playing a lot of zone that day, which negated the, special player that Ramsey is. So I would look for Gilmore heads up, one-on-one with Diggs. And, oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure they might have had a little back and forth in the offseason. Like Diggs was saying, I can't wait to go against Gilmore. So I think that's certainly a matchup you're going to see.
All right, let's see if I at least have a stronger opinion here in the next game that we're going to touch on, and that's the Raiders taking on the Browns. And we talked about this last week, and in fact, we mentioned it already in passing a little bit earlier in the show that the Raiders beat Kansas City and then had a bye week. The Buccaneers beat the Packers. Aaron Rodgers kind of gave that game away a little bit, but that line was pick 'em on the look ahead going into it. And then Tampa Bay winds up going to 3 very quickly. Then, of course, we get all the COVID cases with the Raiders offensive line and all that. And the line goes up 3.5, 4. But, you've got the Raiders here traveling to Cleveland, and this line's only Cleveland minus 2.5. Browns off of a nice come from behind win. The defense played terrible, but Baker made up for that awful interception on the first possession. And the Browns wind up getting 37 points and really should have covered for everybody. Pushed for 3, didn't cover the 3.5 because Cody Parkey missed the extra point. But what do you make of the fact here that the Raiders are not getting the full 3 going to Cleveland this week after not looking very good last week against Tampa Bay?
Well, the one thing I would say to you, bud, and we've seen this a number of times this year, is if you didn't watch a football game and you woke up and you read the box score, you go, oh, these guys killed these guys, or the game was close when the game wasn't close. The Raiders, it was a 1-possession game against the Patriots deep into the third quarter, and the Raiders had Brady, I think it was 3rd and 14, a chance to get off the field. They played the play right, forced him to do the check down. And the running back, ran like 8 yards and threw 3 guys and got the first down. And Gruden said that was the play of the game. And then all of a sudden, like that, Tampa tilts the field, rolls them. They make that one tackle. That's a game conceivably goes down to the wire. But people just go, oh, Tampa killed the Raiders. Don't forget, too, the Raiders had that entire week where their offensive line didn't practice at all because of the COVID concerns. So, again, this is a 1 week to the next thing where I think the Raiders, could have a bounce back effort. And there's something about the Raiders too, Adam, I would just say to you that they play pretty good on the road. They won at Carolina. It was an ugly effort at New England, but they beat the Chiefs on the road. And there's just something about some of these teams I think have a different mentality, the way they play the game, home and away. And if it's routine and bonding and you go on the road and the whole thing, it's a weird thing. And it's an intangible thing. I just think the Raiders play better on the road than at home. And I think this is a really interesting game. I can envision a bounce back effort for the Raiders.
I think this is an interesting handicap for a variety of different reasons. The Browns, I'm surprised at what the Browns did without Austin Hooper over the weekend, because Austin Hooper winds up having an appendectomy. He's their best tight end, but then they use Harrison Bryant and David Njoku, who both have, pretty good days for them. Both guys catching a touchdown pass, Bryant with 2 of them, actually. They lose Odell Beckham Jr. in that game to a torn ACL. And the thing about it is, like, the Browns just have weapon after weapon after weapon. And Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt have done an excellent job with this offense. And we know that if the Raiders have a problem area, it's their defense. But we also know that the Raiders offense is very, very good. I don't know if they're still first or if they're second or third now, but going into last week's game, they were first in the NFL in percentage of possessions ending in points. I mean, they've been very, very good offensively. I'm surprised to see this total coming down a little bit. I know it was high at 55.5. And yeah, I got to check the weather on this one, but the Browns can't stop anybody. I mean, they're getting healthier in the secondary and they still don't look very good back there. So it's crazy to me to see this total coming down a little bit.
But I've got to say to you, though, and I have to plead ignorance. What was the point of the game Beckham got hurt?
It's pretty early.
Okay. Is he one of the few skill position players in the league that should be worth something in relation to the line? And, we know it doesn't matter what running back you're putting in there. They're good, and they do have weapons. But a lot of those guys are good because of the threat and the work you've got to do to cover a guy like Beckham. And maybe not so much this week, but in the weeks to come, these defensive coordinators are no dummy. Now they start, doing the schematics for the Browns without a Beckham, and then they start to take away some of the other pieces. It may not rear its head this week, but in the weeks to come, might the Browns offense struggle a bit in his absence?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. And also, Jarvis Landry is not healthy at all. Jarvis Landry is dealing with multiple injuries. He's throwing for touchdowns and throwing downfield a little bit, but he's not really a huge factor in the receiving game. So that is a little bit of a concern for the Browns, to say the least. Without Nick Chubb, the running game hasn't been quite as potent. With Wyatt Teller hurt, the running game hasn't been quite as potent. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, your devil's advocate point does make some sense there. It's just, again, and I know that home field advantage isn't what it used to be in the past, and it really was trending downward anyway. But now with limited fans, the conveniences of modern day travel and all these types of things, it's still surprising to me to see a team coming 3 time zones. Of course, there's the time change on Sunday morning too. Don't forget about that, football fans. And then going to, what's going to be not a cold weather city, but chilly enough to not see this line at 3. Again, it really stands out to me for a variety of different reasons. And again, I don't know if I'm going to take Cleveland. I don't know if I'm going to take Vegas in this game. Maybe look some more at the total here a little bit. But again, just not seeing this one at 3 maybe speaks to how advanced the betting markets have really gotten.
Well, it's funny. I mean, just the way we're talking about it, it's almost like, maybe it's one to draw a line through. Unless you say the weather's okay, and it would stand to reason that we'd see a lot of points here. The one thing you're not getting here is when stylistically these two teams play the same game. The Monday night game, it was part of the handicap. I played the under in the Monday night game with the Bears against the Rams, and you're like, well, who's going to dictate the game? And the Rams win the game, but they were playing the Bears game. And then it got hairy when the Bears go for it on 4th and 3 from their own 15 in the last 4 minutes of the game. But even though the Bears didn't win the game, they dictated the way the game would be played. Both of these teams want to play up tempos, so good luck figuring out which one's the better one.
One other game I want to touch on a little bit more in detail, and then we'll see if we have any other thoughts to finish up this video here. The Rams and Miami, 263, 264. Rams, 4-point favorite, making their 4th trip to the East Coast here so far. Total on this game, 46. So again, looking for another lower scoring game out of the Los Angeles Rams here based on the line that's out there. But Brian, short week. The Rams are on the road again, 5th time in 7 weeks. The long trip back east yet again. This looks like a spot to hammer Miami, but I have no idea what I get from Tua Tagovailoa in this game.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, the Rams, in terms of the East Coast travel, put 37 up on the Eagles. There was one other one. They won 30-10 against the Redskins. So, take into account who they were playing, the traveling thing. Usually we talk about it. I'm not that concerned, but I'm right with you in terms of, yes, normally in the coming off a bye thing. That you're sitting there, well, that's got to be worth something too. But it's here. Tua gets the start. And I don't know how you play the game with confidence. Maybe I would go the other way, be contrarian and say the over, that the kid can run around and make some plays. Maybe he makes some mistakes. And I think the Rams are going to get their fair share of points. Maybe I'd lean and go contrarian against that total coming down and go over. My concern is, and we're not there, that this kid either has looked so good in practice that it's not an issue. But Ryan Fitzpatrick has just driven me nuts for the better part of a decade. And the guy finally wins me over where he's running around making plays. He's a leader and the guys are playing for him and they're having fun. And you're sitting there at 3-3 and you can make the case, as of today, they're still in the discussion to make the playoffs. And then you all of a sudden make this move. And what message does that send to the rest of the room unless Tua's look so great in practice that the players are on board with it? And we ain't going to know until they kick it off.
Well, and that was the big question was, logically speaking, when you look at the Dolphins heading into this season, you say, okay, if you're going to make that change after the bye week is probably the time to do it. But Ryan Fitzpatrick gave no indication that this was the plan. As you said, they're right there in the thick of things. Fitzpatrick was blindsided by it, and he was upset. And by and large, when you listen to his comments, he was distraught by the decision that they made. Yeah, he took it very, very hard. And maybe a team trades for him now or something like that, or maybe they keep him around to try and mentor Tua. I don't really know. But that's the question. Like you said, what does this do in the room now where you know that long-term Tua is going to be your guy. At some point, he's going to go in there. But you've played pretty well with Fitzpatrick. You're coming off of a significant win going into the bye that gives you the chance, as you said, to be in playoff contention. And now you're going to go to the unproven rookie kid who, missed the second half of his last year in college with a very serious hip injury. That's the thing. I don't know how Miami looks coming out here. I really don't. And again, situationally, off a bye, fourth trip east, the Rams looked tired in that game against San Francisco that they lost 2 weeks ago. They looked like a team that was running on empty from all the travel. This felt like a good fade spot, and now maybe it just isn't.
I'll tell you one thing. I won a bet. I'm doing a Sportsbook Radio with Stevie Slapshot. Great guy, Steve. And I won the bet. And I said yesterday, you watch. I don't get it. It happens every week. I said, there will come a point tonight where McVay will just absolutely waste the timeout. At the 8:13 mark of the first quarter, he did it. You watch. The Rams are going to blow a game because of timeout mismanagement. They just squander timeouts. Like, they might as well just start with none. It's an incredible thing. It sounds like a nothing burger. You watch, as tight as that NFC West is, the Rams are going to blow a game because of that timeout stuff. It drives me insane.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Matt Nagy didn't use his timeouts effectively in last night's game either. It's crazy. I agree with you. Just coaching in general around the NFL leaves something to be desired, but timeout usage is definitely one of those things. So we went in deeper detail here about the Patriots, Bills, the Raiders, Browns, and then also the Rams and Dolphins. Before we finish up this highlight video, Brian, and transition over to golf for a few minutes, let's give the listeners something that, the listeners and the viewers here, something that is more of a play for us, something that we are looking to pick or maybe have already played. Anything on that list for you here?
Oh, boy. In terms of doing the deep dive, the Chargers at Denver, it would be easy to say, well, the Chargers, that offense and the Herbert kid looks really good. And in Denver, Locke was horrid against Kansas City. That Denver defense isn't bad. It's almost like a zigzag thing. I think I'd be looking at Denver as a home dog in a division game here. Again, this is a number 1 week to the next. And yes, and believe me, I think the Herbert kid looks terrific. But, that was the Jags you were shredding. And Denver was playing Kansas City. Just based on that flop around, I'd take the home dog.
I like that one too. It's exactly where I was going to go. I like Denver again this week. I know I was on Denver last week against Kansas City and didn't work out in my favor, but also Denver threw a pick six. They gave up a kick return touchdown. They outgained Kansas City 411 to 286. Yards per play were 5.6 for the Chiefs to 5.4 for the Broncos. You run that back, and that's a game that, should fall within the number where Denver was getting 9.5, 10. So
there was another play, but they did a stupid flea flicker, and on the toss back to the quarterback, Gordon just throws it right over the quarterback's head and just hands him another touchdown. And Locke was just a mess. I mean, but I'm telling you, it's a pretty good two-headed monster with Lindsey and Gordon. It's not bad. And I like Denver's defense. They're not going to wow you, but there are going to be games during the course of the year where Denver's going to be a midful, and I think this is one of them.
And the one thing I will say, and I saw a lot of this buzz on Twitter here this morning with Anthony Lynn and throwing more on first down and some of the different things that the Chargers did in that game against Jacksonville, where they weren't as predictable with their play calling as they usually are. Maybe that was a one-game blip. Maybe that's something that they're going to stick with. But still, I think Denver in this spot here, I do like them certainly. And I hope I get 3.5. There are some -3s at $1.20 out there. Maybe a 3.5 shows up by the time the contest lines get posted, or as we kind of wait around on this game a little bit. One other one that really caught my eye.
Real quick, I'm looking this up if I can. Real quick. Let me just see something here. The Chargers running game, to me, at some point, that's going to rear its head. And yeah, I mean, listen, the Joshua Kelly kid and Justin Jackson, Herbert was the leading rusher with 66 yards. I mean, that injury in the backfield for them was a killer, losing Eckler. But again, you're likely going on the road, and if you become one-dimensional, he's going to do a few good things. But believe me, I think Herbert's going to struggle in this game because the Chargers have no running game, none. And they put 39 points up. They're like, oh, this Chargers offense. Yeah, that was a function of who they were playing. They can't run the ball.
Oh, excellent thoughts. A lot of excellent thoughts from Brian Blessing, who also has some video breakdowns for us on our ATS YouTube page. More thoughts on Falcons and Panthers. Also a look at 49ers, Seahawks, and Steelers, Ravens. So you can check out those videos right here on our ATS YouTube page. And make sure you listen to the full broadcasts of ATS Radio, which you can find on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, wherever you stream and download your podcast content. All right, Brian, with that, we transition away from the NFL. Just spend a couple of minutes here talking about the Bermuda Championship, which, again, you also did a video for over on our ATS YouTube. But very weak field here in Bermuda this week. We're in Houston next week. The Masters comes up right after that. What do you do in these weaker fields, Brian? Are you just taking some long shots here in Bermuda?
Well, no, I mean, if they're the guys I think you contend, and the prices are actually deflated for some of the guys I've selected. But the problem is the favorite in the event is Will Zalatoris. Will Zalatoris is trying to get FedEx Cup points to keep his card or to get exemptions into tournaments. He's going to. He only needs 3 points, and he's played really well. But this guy's the favorite, and he's just trying to stay on the tour. Brendan Todd, defending champ, his play's tailed off a little bit. And then all of a sudden you go to Harold Varner, Christopher Ventura, Doc Redmond. I mean, some of these names, Emiliano Grillo. The thing I'm looking forward to watch, I have no life. You know that. I bet and watch the European Tour, and this is probably going to be the first time anybody's seen or heard of Rasmus Højgaard. He's 40-1. Adam, this kid was born December 3rd, 2001. If my math is right, that means he's still 18 years old. He has 2 wins, a second and a third on the European tour. The kid, nobody even knows who he is. And he's coming over here making his PGA Tour debut. And in this field, there ain't no reason he can't contend. Although it's a different game. They've been playing in crummy weather and more link style. Well, actually, I wouldn't say link style. Some of these courses that you can still flag hunt. But I'm going to be very intrigued to see how the kid handles this moment. He's catching the right field. And a lot of times when you get this Bermuda tournament too, the winds can be a thing. So you want guys that are good ball strikers. The other 2 guys, I think a guy like Henrik Norlander at 45-1 is a guy who could take the next step against a field like this. And flying under the radar is a guy I think plays really good, and he's close to taking the next step. And again, with this field, maybe a guy like Sepp Straka in the 55-60-1 range.
Well, in this course here, Port Royal Golf Course, shorter course, only a par 71, but it's only about 6,800 and change in terms of yardage. So you don't have to have big bombers for this event.
Yep.
And as you look at it too, it kind of is more of that links European style format. Again, Port Royal, I think I saw it's like part of the Troon family of golf courses. So like Royal Troon, it is a lot more like a European course. It's very, it's very flat, not very tree lined. There are some link style bunkers and kind of some undulations and stuff like that. Wind can be a big factor. So a guy like Hogard makes sense. A guy like Danny Willett at 50-1 even makes some sense. Russell Knox, Brandon Grace, some of those guys, some of the guys that are more equipped to playing this European tour style of golf, I think it may make some sense for them. You think about a guy like Brendan Todd winning last year. Brendan Todd hits fairways, is good on approach. He doesn't hit the ball a mile like a lot of these guys do. It's kind of it's less sexy of a profile, but it's the types of styles that win you tournaments in these windy areas. Pat Perez plays very well in coastal courses because he hits fairways, puts it on the green, 1 putts or 2 putts, and gets on with his day. So there are some guys I think down the board you can take a little bit of a look at here this week. Ollie Schneider-Johns has played very well over on the European Tour. A few years ago, he was the top player on the PGA Tour in par 4 scoring. He's a guy I like kind of at 80-1 there. Another guy that I kind of took a little bit of a look at, Ryan Armour in the 150-1 range or so. He's a guy that just hits a bunch of fairways. Older player, nothing sexy about his game, anything like that. But I think this is a tournament where you can take some shots because the guys up at the top are really promising, like a Doc Redman, who's a great ball striker, but he's also got to get over that hump and win something.
All you need to know, okay, the Breeders' Cup's coming up, and in horse racing, you find a maiden, first race, 35-1, and the horse gets cut off or bobbles at the break and then comes roaring up, and you're going, oh, I had the right horse. I had poor racing luck. But the horse was 35-1. Well, everybody saw what happened. And then the next race, the horse comes back, and he wins at 2-1. That's not how you want to play the game. This golf tournament is like horse racing because Brendan Todd is 14-1. I don't know for a fact. Anybody wants to do the lookup, go ahead. I can virtually guarantee you that Brendan Todd was 125-1 last year when he won this tournament. And what a difference a year makes. Now he's 14-1. So this is that type of tournament where someone gets their career going.
No, yeah, that's an excellent point. I absolutely agree with you. And again, full FedEx Cup point event here. The prize purse is kind of small, but full FedEx Cup points and a Masters invite if you win. So maybe you want to look for guys that aren't in the Masters. Oh, it's for next year?
For next year.
Oh, okay, for next. Well, next year's Masters will be in April again, right? Hopefully.
Well, 2 Masters in 5 months.
Ooh, sounds like fun. Sounds like a whole lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun here on our Tuesdays. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. It is always a lot of fun here on our Tuesday editions of ATS Radio with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how can people check out those 2 shows of yours?
The shows are live noon to 2, kshp.com. You can listen live there. I archive the shows at sportsbookradio.com. Put the links out on my Twitter at Brian Blessing. And Sportsbook Radio, we have great fun with, some of the top sports book directors in town. Today we'll have Tony Neville from Treasure Island, Tony Miller from the Golden Nugget. It's Tony's Tuesday. And Vegas Hockey Hotline. If you're a hockey fan, you'll like the show. Put it that way. If you're a hockey fan, you'll like the show.
It is a great show, and you do a lot of great work for us over on our ATS YouTube page as well. Make sure you follow Brian on Twitter at Brian Blessing. Brian, appreciate the time as always, sir. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Have a great week, bud.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing again, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Sportsbookradio.com, KSHP.com, at Brian Blessing on Twitter. On Wednesday, we'll chat with Kyle Hunter, professional bettor and handicapper from HunterSportsPicks.com, about some college football matchups for this week, as well as the NFL. Thursday, college football and NFL with Brad Powers from BradPowersSports.com. Friday, Circus Sports Million Picks, my thoughts for Week 8. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.